Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Alberta Canola Producers Commission, Sask Canola, and Manitoba Canola Growers.
Kelvin Hepner with Brian Innes, Vice President of Government Relations with the Canola Council of Canada. Brian, and we were just talking about that title also involves the trade file, and we've just seen the Canadian government launch consultations on a trade deal with China, potentially moving forward in that direction. What does this mean for Canada's canola sector?
Well, it could mean a huge opportunity for us. When we look at the barriers we're facing in China, one of those barriers is around tariffs, and getting rid of tariffs can really only be done through a trade agreement. So when we look at the tariffs that canola faces in China, it's about 9% on all of our canola seed, which is actually 3 times higher than one of the main competitors that canola has of soybeans. So that has a huge impact on the competitiveness of canola in China, but also more broadly around the world.
Mm-hmm. So that 9% tariff, is that Canadian canola or all canola going into, is that a Canadian tariff or canola and soybeans from other countries as well?
Yeah, so that applies to all canola going into China. Of course, most of the canola that goes into China is from Canada. In fact, not just in China, but 2/3 of the world's canola that's traded is coming from Canada. So when we look at who has an interest in the world on getting rules that allow us to trade canola better, it's really Canada who has the strongest interest by far of any other country.
Okay. What does this mean in terms of volumes or export potential growth in straight up having that reduced tariff?
Well, it is a huge opportunity. When we look at what getting rid of tariffs on canola oil, on canola meal, and on canola seed could do for us, we see being able to export about $1.2 billion more of canola from Canada every year. So that's a pretty large number, but it does reflect a view of the value chain that is realistic. So that is just taking away the tariff. That's not looking at the future growth potential in China, which our industry also sees as quite significant, both on the healthy oil side, but then also on the protein side for our canola meal that feeds fish and livestock in China.
Okay, so that's more of the long-term outlook, strategic outlook for Canada's canola industry, probably heavily centers around having this demand in Asia?
Absolutely. So when we look out to our strategic plan of getting 26 million tons of production by 2025, China is a huge portion of that new growth opportunity. And it's really because of that demand for a healthy oil and protein that's driving it. So getting rid of the tariffs is a necessary part for us to be able to have access to the markets that we can then get value from to encourage growers to invest what's required to increase the yields to get to that 52 bushels per acre by 2025.
Mm-hmm. We also have this blackleg issue looming over Canadian canola exports to China. It's been temporarily dealt with. Would a trade deal potentially include resolution to that issue?
Well, hopefully it will obtain a permanent solution on blackleg before we have a free trade agreement. If we look at what other countries have done with China, say looking at Australia, for example, it took them about 10 years to get their trade agreement. We hopefully will be able to get an agreement quicker than 10 years, but our current timeline on the blackleg agreement goes until 2020. So we want to work, actually we're already working now for the things that we need to have in place to get a permanent solution by the time it expires in 2020.
Okay. What about other non-tariff trade barriers such as trade approvals? Or potentially, I guess they could be categorized as non-tariff trade barriers.
Yeah, well, that is also a work in progress. We engage on a number of different issues. Some are best solved through trade agreements, and some are solved in other ways. What we know about the process for these trade agreement discussions is that it involves regular discussions with Chinese officials and Chinese high-level ministers and Canadian ministers. So those are good things to be able to help us solve issues like the biotech trade approvals, where we've had 3 traits approved in Canada since 2012, and we're still waiting on Chinese approval. So 2017 is a key year for that opportunity, and we're hopeful that we can continue to work on that.
So that's also on a shorter time horizon, though, than an FTA with China, of course.
The specific 3 canola traits, I think there are larger system concerns that are common to all countries and all crops, but when we look at our canola priorities, those 3 traits are very much a short-term short-term, if you can call it the fact that they've been approved since 2012, can be an opportunity for us.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time to join us again, Brian. And we'll look forward to where this goes, where the consultations and Canadian government goes in terms of accessing new market access for canola here.
Yeah, that's right. So there'll be an open conversation in Canada about what that can look like with China. From a canola perspective, we see amazing opportunities by getting rid of those tariffs, and having a full free trade agreement with China would enable us to do that. So that's what we'll be communicating to growers and the industry across the country, as well as sharing that with our government in Ottawa.
Okay. One final question then. Do you feel the Canadian government is well aware of the importance of this access for the canola industry and the impact that could have economically?
Well, we do our best to make sure that they're
That's your job,
I
guess.
We do have regular discussions with working level officials as well as political officials as well. We had a very good discussion with the Minister of Trade here today, regular interaction as well with the Minister of Agriculture. So yes, we're very active in ensuring that there's a common understanding of what can enable our industry to grow and how we can create more jobs through international trade.
All right. Thanks for your time, Brian.
Thank you, Calvin.